topic for this talk came about from a conversation I had with James Millett. James is the head of digital marketing at easyJet. And the conversation started with a bit of reminiscence about the sort of the good old .com days. We'd both grown up in that era and had a lot of these chairs kicking around the offices that we worked in. But we were talking about the kind of work that we did, and back in those days, ideas came quickly. It didn't take long for an idea to go from a brainstorming session, get it approved by a client, and get it out to their customers. Things moved quickly. Sure, they didn't always work. There was always times when we launched something and it completely fell on its face, but we had 3 or 4 more ideas coming down the line behind that one, and the business was letting us play in our little .com world. They didn't really understand what websites were all about, and sort of we were just able to get on with things. And what the big contrast then is with the situation that we have now. Websites are key to most businesses. Certainly with someone like easyJet, their website is their business. You're taking £8 million a day on the site. If anything goes wrong, if any sort of line of code goes up onto those servers and causes any problems, then it's going to be the CEO who's going to be calling you at whatever time of day it is to make sure that's sorted out. The other thing is the speed at which the business is changing. So I think Dietmar talked a lot about how fast things are moving. The first billion tweets, I think, took 3 years to get to 1 billion tweets, and now we're doing well over 1 billion every week. Things are moving quickly. Mobile devices, it's hard to keep up with. I think one of the health span was talking earlier about trying to keep up with tablets and the next new device that's coming along. But I think also it's the way the customers' expectations are changing. Again, I think Dietmar talked a lot about how the balance of power has moved from the brands towards the customers, and the customers' expectations of what a good website should be, how fast it should respond, how easy it should, how similar it should look on whichever device they're coming into, the fact that they're looking at lunchtime on their old IE6 PC at work to the mobile phone in the evening. The expectations are so much higher, and therefore the need of the business is for things to happen ever faster. So this was really the crux of the conversation I was having with James, was this paradox that you've got the need for the business, from the business, which is to go faster, do more stuff, keep up with the customers, get ahead of the competition, and with all that, with all the needs that you're getting from the business, you're also more and more critical to what the business is trying to achieve. So if you're being core to that business, if anything goes wrong with the websites, then you're going to be, your head is on the block. So there's all this extra layers of complexity that comes in. You've got more and more release strategy, more and more releases before you get to live. You've got more and more paperwork for getting stuff signed off to get it through to live. Everything, the fact that you're so core to the business slows you down. You cannot get through to the customers as quickly as you could do. So we're sort of stuck in this. When the business didn't care about us, we could do everything fast. Now the business really cares about what we're doing, and it's getting harder and harder to just get those, get that innovation out and do the things fast enough to deal with the customers. So what happened? This was the real question that we were struggling to answer. From the .com 10 years ago, when things were easy, to today, what's changed? So I think one of the first things was all the stuff that we wrote back in the .com days is now our legacy. Are now legacy systems that we need to support, we need to interface with, we need to get data out of. In the case of easyJet, metaphorically, the existing system looked a bit like this. It'd been around since the start of easyJet, pretty much. They had a week cycle just to get content updated. They got a 5 to 6 week cycle to get new code releases. Half the people who had written it had left the building, so all that knowledge had disappeared when they went. There was fear that you could see in the whites of the eyes of the developers when you talked to them about making the changes. They just didn't want to go anywhere near it. It was just a huge accident waiting to happen. So they really sort of restricted the changes that they were going to make to these little tiny areas where they felt, oh, we've made a few changes in that area, so we're okay with that. But the marketing team then are just like, we've got stuff to do, we're falling behind the competition, our customers are getting, they want these things that we want to do, we've got the ideas, but we just can't get them through the system. I think the other aspect is the organizations themselves. So I think the fact that in the old days, we were siloed off into these digital teams and sort of left to get on with it. That was great. We could just sort of do our own thing. The whole team was there together to be able to do everything. But as the projects got bigger, even within the digital teams, you start to see silos appearing. You've now got the sort of usability teams with a sort of head of usability and then a hierarchy of people under them. You've got the content editors and a hierarchy there. You've got the IT guys. You've got IT themselves, which are probably another part of the organization. You've got all these sort of silos building up. And the problem with silos is the communication. So every time you've got a little guy at the bottom of the tree wanting to do something, he's got to talk to his boss has got to talk to his boss. That then gets cascaded back down again. Communication just becomes a nightmare. Coordination becomes a nightmare. And all this stuff just slows you down. You have to have meetings and project managers to sort things out and make things happen. And that's in the good places. In the bad places, you've got politics and turf wars and all that negative energy that's going to be slowing you down and causing problems and reducing your business's effectiveness. The other thing that we notice is this tendency to go big up front. If something's starting to look scary, if it's starting to look a bit tricky about what we're going to do, then the tendency will be to do more analysis up front, spend more time putting spec documents together, just general sort of waterfall techniques, which are all good and fine when you've got a sort of repeatable project that you're doing time and time again. You can build up a nice little process and get it all working. But when you're trying to innovate, you need to move much quicker and get stuff out there and get it tested. I think it was, as Dietmar was talking about the Coca-Cola experiment, where they went from, sort of 70% of what they were doing was sort of traditional. They knew what they were doing. They'd done it before. They could roll out a plan and do that stuff. It was that 10% that was, the crazy stuff that's much harder to do when you put it into a plan, because you just put that stuff into a plan and then you're into weeks rather than days and things slow down. The other issue, I think this is the last one that we'd spotted, was the use of targets. So in this instance, I'm thinking about deadlines and the need for projects to work to a specific deadline in a specific point in time. Now these deadlines work great if you're looking at a project on an individual basis. You can see that it motivates the team, it gets everybody focused on one key date. You're going to make sure everybody's focused on achieving that deadline. The problem we find with deadlines when you look at the long term is that that focus on that deadline, people will hit a target, and people will hit a target because they cut corners and they take shortcuts to make sure that everyone at the high level is happy because that release went out on time. And what happens over time is that you introduce, you've got your legacy system anyway, and now you're introducing more sort of low quality code, which slows you down further and makes it harder for the marketing team then to turn around and say, well, we need this quickly. And it's like, well, you want that quickly, but that was built on that code that we rushed out just before Christmas to hit the the sales period, and so it sort of snowballs. Another word for that is a death march. So what have we seen working? So this was, you know, easyJet isn't perfect, but there are a lot of good things that we'd seen working with James on a combination of projects that helped us get around some of these problems. So the first thing we had was, so when we had this old bucket of a CMS, the thing that had been around for 5 years and took 5 weeks to deploy, we wanted to isolate that off. We wanted to sort of make sure that we didn't have to go anywhere near that beast of code. It was all separated off. Sitecore would be sitting on new servers, a new release pipeline, a new way of getting the code out, nice, clean install. We also automated the release process, so that could be done much snappier. So on the legacy site, it would be a sort of 2-week cycle of manual deploys and database moves and all this sort of stuff. But on the Sitecore side, then you've got a nice automated set of tests that wrap any code that we're putting together. And we also take an incremental approach. This is, we just did one page at a time. So with easyJet, the first page that we did was the home page. I think we joked for a while with Laus that, you know, all we've done is release one page onto the site. But it was, by taking that one page, we proved the whole platform. We got all the release processes in place, and we figured out what it took to get stuff live with easyJet. So when the first page was done, the next 5 pages were much easier, sort of the regional landing pages. Then we went to the bulk of the rest of the site with the destination pages. And we've pretty much taken everything now onto the Sitecore platform, except for the booking engine. So the booking engine still to this day, and I think for quite a few years yet, will remain the sort of the ownership of the IT team, because fundamentally for easyJet, their business is that booking funnel, and they're not going to give that up to a sort of an external third party to play with that, which we're quite happy with. So in terms of the silos, I think it's what we tried to do with easyJet was get cross-functional teams together. Obviously, this is, you know, this might be a fairly obvious thing to say, but quite hard to do. But we did try and get people from the marketing team, the content editing team, the guys who were doing the load testing, the guys who were doing all the hosting, obviously my team who were doing the builds, the designers, really got all those people together and working together as a team. There was no need to sort of communicate out of a particular structure and go and ask for some resource over here. We had sort of dedicated resource from each one of those people. And where we couldn't achieve that, and what we find in some organizations which have a big hierarchy and you're not going to be able to remove the hierarchy, is just to use something that's probably already there, which is a sort of an informal social networking, informal social networks that build up in these big organizations where you have hierarchies. So for companies where it's very hard to get things done, you'll find that people will have their people that they can go and speak to. And in the case of easyJet, we had a great project manager who just knew everyone. Anytime he needed to get stuff done, he would walk over to someone's desk, sit there for an hour, waiting for them to come back to the desks, have donuts ready, and able to just, you know, oil the wheels and make things happen outside of the big structure that was in place. The other thing was, so in terms of the targets, so we tried to avoid setting expectations with the business about target dates. Instead, we would measure how far we'd got in terms of progressing each of the builds, and then project a potential date from that progress. So we'd be trying to get as much code all the way through to a live site, and we would be putting stuff onto the live servers, even though it wasn't open to, only we could see it from a sort of customer point of view. But we were putting code all the way through, and we were then able to track our progress to a milestone point in time using the code that had been that had made it all the way through. This gave us an ability to give set expectations with the marketing team about when things would be delivered. So rather than them turning to us and saying, this must be out by this date, we were going, right, well, if we can get half their website done in the next 4 weeks, then there's a pretty good likelihood that we'll get the second half done in the 4 weeks following. And therefore, we've got a fairly good likelihood that we're gonna hit your sort of 10 to 12 week ideal case. If anything came up through that process that meant that that wasn't going to happen, then we were able to set expectations very early on. Also, in terms of the outcomes, we were looking, the only outcome that we were really interested in was, we weren't looking at page views or number of clicks or anything like that. What we were interested in is the increase in revenue and ultimately increase in share price that would happen once we'd put these changes live. So it's all about measuring the outcomes, not setting targets, but being very realistic and as we increment and deliver new bits of functionality, we can say, well, that's made this much sense, so therefore we can make some projections about what's going to happen, but we don't set expectations with business on targets. And the final thing is the ability that we had to iterate. Now, there's two words I get confused with, the increments and the iterations. So the increments are the little slivers of additional functionality. Iteration is putting the whole thing out there and then seeing what happens and then making a change to that to improve it further. So we take this, we use this approach all the way through the design process. So even from day one, you'll see the designs are changing on a very quick basis. So what we're doing is, now this is the Inspire Me app that we produced for easyJet. Now, the challenge to this was that you've got 40,000 routes being updated every 10 minutes. So we get a new piece of price information for each of easyJet's routes every 10 minutes. And what we needed to do was be able to plot those in real time on a map to show, so you could vary your price slider and say, I'm looking for prices for £30. I want to fly from Bristol, I want to go in the next 30 days. So you can put in all your variables, and then the website will update itself. Now, easyJet had tried to do this 4 times previously, and each time that they tried to do it, they'd taken the approach of getting in a design agency, getting them having a look at producing some wireframes. They'd put the wireframes together, they'd then put a lovely design on top. It would all be looking beautiful. The marketing team would be going, yeah, that's brilliant, we want that thing. It would then hit the IT team, and they'd go, no way, do you understand how much load that's going to put on our servers? Or there's the level of complexity is way too high, or it's going to take us 14 months to build the thing. So what we did instead was we started off by building a proof of concept, literally with the price slider on the left, but no map, and just each of the prices that came out, and started playing with that. When we got that working, it looked awful, but it showed that we could make these controls move fast enough. Once we'd got that, we then started showing that to, so that really defined what we could do on the left there. We then started showing that to the designers. The designers would put a skin on it. We'd take that skin, overlay that on the build, then show that back to the business. So it was a very iterative process of showing something to the business, them having a play. You really get a feel for it as well. So the ultimate product when you finish is much more, it feels nicer, if that makes any sense. But you're going to have a play. Inspire me off the main page of easyJet. So that was it. This was the summary of the conversation. We're in a situation where the websites that we're building are ever more business critical. That makes it harder and harder to get new features and new innovations up on these sites. But paradoxically, we've got a business that is asking for all this stuff quicker and quicker and quicker, and the competitive landscape and the expectations of the customers means we need these things faster. The problems we see that are causing that problem are, the legacy systems, the stuff that we wrote many years ago, the silos and the politics that you get within sort of large organizations when you need to be able to talk to. easyJet do this great thing where once a month the digital marketing team get together with the cabin crew. So they'll have representation from the cabin crew who sort of consolidate all their feedback from passengers and bring that to the digital team, and vice versa. The digital team, including the guys running the Twitter feeds, are then talking with the cabin crew on what they could do better their way. So it's that kind of sort of cross communication between these different departments that give you that lifetime value. We avoid the big upfront everything trap. We try and get stuff out very early, very quickly. We iterate very fast. We show it to business users. We get it out there. We put it in front of, when we did the homepage, we went from sort of 1% of the traffic and tried that for a couple of weeks just to make sure that we were getting the increases in revenue that we'd expect from the redesign. And we just focus on, we avoid targets and we look at the measures instead. So that was me.